everybody, and welcome to the Daiwa Anglo-Japanese Foundation's webinar. My name is Jason James. Just before we start, I have to run through the rules of this, and I should mention also today, I have this Make It Blue background behind me, which one of our speakers, Noelle Thatcher, will explain a little bit later, so I'll leave that to him. So I'm sitting at home in Cambridge, and our other two speakers are Noelle Thatcher, MBE, who is in London, and Mitsuru Nagase, who is joining us from Hokkaido in Japan. And I'll just briefly introduce the two speakers. So Noelle Thatcher, MBE, is a long distance runner who has represented the UK 6 times at the Paralympics and got 5 gold medals. I won't run through the whole of his CV here, but it's also worth noting that he is fluent in Japanese. In fact, I had the pleasure of hearing him give a talk in Japanese just before the lockdown started. And he's been very active in helping to try to promote the 2020 Paralympics, which have now become the 2021 Paralympics. I think they're still going to be called 2020 Paralympics. So he's been a great help to many people in Japan and in promoting UK-Japan relations, and has therefore been given the Japanese Foreign Minister's commendation for his work. So going on to Mitsuru Nagase, he is a para ice hockey goalkeeper who was the goalkeeper for the Japanese team between 1998 and 2015. And he took part in the Paralympics 4 times, which peaked with a silver medal for the Japanese team in 2010. And he was also chosen in the World All-Star team at the World Championships in 2000, placing him in the top 6 global players, and presumably that would make him the top goalkeeper. And he is now a director at the Paralympians Association of Japan. Okay, next slide. So this is how we're doing it. Hopefully I've taken about 5 minutes. We then go on to the 2 talks, and we will have the Q&A session, hopefully starting about 1:45. And we'll probably run on a little bit longer than 1 o'clock, but we'll see how it goes. I hope to wind things up in any case by about 1:15. So let me pass over to our first speaker, Noelle Thatcher.
Thank you, Jason. Hopefully everybody can see me. There we go. Hello to everybody in England, and good evening to everybody in Japan. I am absolutely delighted to be here today, particularly as we are reaching people as far away as Hokkaido and people in Warsaw, all over the world. This is what sport in its very essence is all about, which is bringing people together. So before I get into my main presentation, I believe that Ota-san is going to share a brief video by way of introduction.
And what a wonderful moment for the British, especially the flag carrier, Noelle Thatcher, distance runner on the track. He's medalled at every game since 1984.
I think we're good. Thank you very much. A much younger, much thinner, and a great deal faster version of me, but some wonderful memories shared with some wonderful people all around the world. And again, can everybody see me there? I seem to have disappeared. Okay, so today's webinar, transforming challenges into opportunities. And I think this is something that, as Paralympians, we do remarkably well, even if I do say so myself, and I'm sure Nagase-san, who I'm absolutely delighted to be sharing a platform with, will go on to share his own journey a little bit later. But if we could have the next slide, please, Edmund. I just want to start off by reiterating my thanks to Daiwa for bringing us all together. And I've already mentioned how important I feel it is that sport does bring people together, and that's been really the focus of my entire sporting career, to use my abilities as a runner to connect with people from all around the world, but particularly for the last 28 years to connect with the people of Japan. So working towards Tokyo 2020 for me is which will now be 2021, was really a dream come true. I'd equally like to thank my friends at the Hokkaido Shimbun for sponsoring the event. I have fond memories of running the Hokkaido Marathon in '95. Well, I have fond memories of the first 10 miles. The last 16 miles were a little bit of a blur because I went off very, very quickly. But this hospitality, warmth, friendship of the people of Hokkaido, I very much appreciate and still do. Again, I think finally, I want to thank everybody for giving up their time today to listen to us speak. I think this is a great opportunity to come together and share knowledge and share experience, because the last 3 months have been incredibly difficult for all of us, not specifically the sporting community or the sporting community, the para-sporting community, as it were. Everybody's had to make enormous sacrifice and adjustments, and it's been a time of learning. It's been a time of incredible change. It's been a time of stress. And it's great to be able to come together. And looking down the guest list, so many names, friends from various organizations, both here and in Japan. I'm delighted we can come together virtually, and hopefully soon we'll be able to come together physically. Edmund, next slide, please. I'm also really delighted to be supporting the Make It Blue campaign. I want to say apologies to the Make It Blue comms team, because they did their very best to make sure that I could have the virtual background that you see Jason and I think Nagase-san's going to use. Sadly, my Mac, like me, is a little bit old and crumbly and wouldn't support it. So, but thank you very much for your efforts. Healthcare heroes. I mean, but not just in the UK, but all around the world. We all have cause to thank our healthcare workers, the doctors, nurses, carers, ambulance staff, and those other services like the police who supported their work, because without their efforts, sadly, we would have lost many, many more lives. And I think today is a great opportunity for all of us just to pause and give thanks for their incredible sacrifice. When you look at the Paralympic values, as I was preparing this PowerPoint, I looking back at these values: courage, determination, equality, and inspiration. I think these qualities they're embodied within our doctors and our health workers. I myself I'm currently an NHS employee. I work in a hospital as a physiotherapist, and we're supporting those people who've had COVID in their recovery. I worked in the NHS previously about 25 years ago as well. And many of my colleagues had to step outside their comfort zone professionally and personally. And this is on top of being directly impacted by the pandemic and needed every ounce of courage that our Paralympians and Olympians need in their daily life, but particularly the Paralympics, perhaps. Determinations are given. It's working day after day, 12-hour shifts in PPE is something that we can only, imagine the difficulties. And I work with consultants, extremely eminent, renowned doctors who would personally confess to being terrified by the whole process of coming into contact with COVID and all that brought with it. So tremendous respect for each and every one of them. Equality, two more to go. Equality, the COVID's affected everybody. It's affected all communities, potentially not affected all communities equally. Some of the poorer communities particularly been very hardly hit. But the care workers and the doctors have treated everybody with equality and gone the extra mile each and every time to assist with their recovery. And then inspiration. Well, if you needed a role model at the moment, then I suggest we have thousands of them amongst our nurses, doctors, theatre staff, and the staff that support those staff within any healthcare institution. Hospital cleaners have become our heroes. I make a point every single day going to work to thank our cleaners for keeping our hospitals clean and keeping our patients safe. Next slide, please, Edmund. It also occurred to me when I was preparing the presentation that the NHS and the Paralympic movement have a very long, shared and intertwined heritage and history. So the NHS, in the National Health Service in the UK, was established in 1948, which happened to be the same year that Sir Ludwig Goodman set up the first Stoke Mandeville Games, which was the precursor to the Paralympic movement. I think similarly in Japan, in the early 1960s, a young doctor from Oita, Nakamura Yutaka, set up the first Sports Association for the Disabled in Oita Prefecture, and he went on to be the sort of forefather, Sir Ludwig Goodman's Japanese equivalent, as it were, in developing parasport. Many, if not all, Paralympic athletes, particularly in the UK, but I suspect the situation is similar in Japan and other countries, have benefited directly in many ways from the support of the NHS and healthcare workers, be it those people such as myself, born with a congenital eyesight issue, who've been looked after by the ophthalmologists, the eye specialist doctors in the hospital, to spinal injuries patients cared for at Stoke Mandeville Hospital, rehabilitated by NHS physiotherapists and introduced to sport by and coached through their sporting careers by many disability sports organisations staff who've also worked within the National Health Service. So I feel that the Paralympic movement, the National Health Service, doctors and carers have an intertwined history and legacy. We're very much part of the same family. I myself, as a young physiotherapy student, spent a month in Stoke Mandeville Hospital working on the spine injuries unit. It's a very proud memory for me, and I feel especially connected by virtue of the fact that I still am working within the NHS and using many of my experiences as a Paralympian to try and motivate patients in their recovery. Next slide, please, Edmund. Okay, so early 2020, which seems like a lifetime ago now, we were very, very, very much looking forward to an incredible summer of sport. And for me, the Rugby World Cup in 2019, raised that level of expectation, that level of anticipation significantly. Japan was, as we all knew it would be, an incredible host, welcoming all teams from all over the world in a way that kind of transcended hospitality. It was more than hospitality. I particularly remember the community in Kitakyushu, 16,000 people turning up to watch Wales in a training game, the buses and taxis in the city having the Welsh flag Japan was absolutely magnificent as a host, and I think the teams and the fans responded in a way which is fairly unique to Japan, and maybe unique to rugby as well. And the reason I chose this slide, but for me, this was an iconic moment in the Rugby World Cup, when, following the typhoon and the destruction, devastation that brought with it, the Canadian team, who were due to play in Kamaishi before their game was cancelled, they stayed back and got together to help clean up the town. And that commitment to Japan by the foreign teams, I thought was a model for sport and a model for sportsmanship, and really showed what can happen when great people come together to do great things, and how powerful a vehicle sport can be in bringing people together and creating that powerful collaborative effect. So I was working, as Jason said, with a number of organizations, and I have been for the last few years, including Japan Foundation, the Japanese Embassy, Japan Sports Council, work with Daiwa and the Japan Society in the UK, also some of the disability sports organisations, Paralympics GB, British Athletics, and I'd gone out to talk to many of the teams of para canoeing, para rowing, English Institute of Sport, and just introducing Japan, Japanese culture, a little bit of Japanese language. And the feeling that I had back from the teams was that everybody was looking at Tokyo as being the next London Paralympics. Now, London Paralympics, set the bar as far as equality, in terms of sporting performances, the facilities, the fans. It was an incredible experience. But there was very much feeling amongst the para athletes and the support staff who I spoke to leading up to Tokyo that Tokyo would be even better. And those athletes who'd already been to Japan, to preparation camps and come back, had every single one of them had been amazed by the hospitality that they had, the culture, the quality of the facilities exceeded their expectations. And we were all looking forward to what was going to be an incredible summer. Next slide, please, Edmund. Hello? Perfect. Right. Sadly, we'll all be too familiar with the image on the right at this point in time. And for us in the UK, I think it was 23rd of March, we went into lockdown. And sadly, the following day, 24th of March, still not 3 months ago, but it does again seem like a lifetime ago, all sport effectively was suspended. And it wasn't a shock as such, because there had been an awful lot of discussion around the feasibility of putting on a summer Paralympic and Olympic Games, with COVID lurking in the background and becoming an ever more present influence in our day-to-day lives. But there was palpable disappointment, and this, for many people, it was a very difficult time. And I do want to just reiterate that that the coronavirus and pandemic and COVID-19 has affected far more people than just the sporting population, and in some cases in a devastating way. And sports sometimes described as a magnificent triviality. It's incredibly important, and particularly to our lives as Paralympians, but to the community and many of the people who will be listening to this webinar. But we have to remember that there are individuals and communities out there who probably suffered far more than we have done. But going forwards, I think when we look at rebuilding sport, it should be within the context of the effect on the global community, which is something I may come back to a little later. So, in terms of how COVID and the pandemic impacted people, well, it certainly impacted athletes as individuals, and all athletes are human beings and prone to the same emotional responses as everybody else. clearly some people are very, very bright and very positive. Some people, sport has a significant number of people involved, sadly, who have some mental health issues, and for them it was particularly difficult. But within the para sporting community, we have some unique challenges already. So in terms of that each individual's sport and each individual's disability brought with it unique challenges. And just as a couple of examples, it's clearly a lot easier as a visually impaired distance runner to run on a treadmill in your own home or go out for a run in the 1 hour of exercise that you have available to you. It's a little more challenging to find somewhere to ride your horse, canoe, or possibly do ice hockey under the constraints of a lockdown. But with the disabilities, for instance, I recently watched an item on BBC News that even now athletes are being able to train. One of my good friends and a double gold medalist from Rio, blind sprinter Libby Clegg, who is now back in training but is not able to be connected to her guide runner with a guide rope, because that would contravene the social distancing restrictions, which mean that we can't be any closer than, in the UK at least, 2 meters from the next person. So to be blind and not able to run with the guide rope poses some significant challenges to training. She's able to train, she's not able to run fast, and it's significantly more dangerous. But that's just one arguably slightly frivolous sort of very real example of how disability sports person might be impacted. But for people with more profound disabilities and more profound mobility impairments, clearly it became incredibly difficult to train. People had to get creative very quickly, and we're quite fortunate in the UK. We have an incredible support structure for our para athletes, and many people enjoy the support of their local sporting community, and we're able to access or to get equipment that enables them to train. But I can imagine that in some of the poorer nations in the world, then the solutions were far more difficult to come by. And for instance, athletes who compete with prostheses weren't able to access medical support and prosthetics department. I presume this is the same situation for someone who's in a wheelchair. But again, many athletes, para-athletes, do have complex disabilities which of themselves constituted high risk, and who therefore had to shelter. And in the UK, that was for 3 months. And this, 3 months in the life of an athlete, it is an incredibly long time. Many of the athletes, some athletes had already qualified for Tokyo, and their qualification or qualifying performances will then enable them to go forward and still compete next year. But for an awful lot of athletes, that they were still to qualify and make the teams. And to be a Paralympian, to make one team is the dream of every sportsman and woman, child with an impairment, and to see that opportunity disappearing with no guarantee that it was ever going to be there again was devastating for some people. Right at the beginning of the pandemic, the level of fear, the confusing and often terribly scary messaging meant that a lot of people were faced with the significant possibility that they would not make a Paralympic dream. And when you've dedicated your every waking moment, you've committed every resource available to you, your family has made sacrifices, your communities in many cases funded those efforts, that's a tremendous blow. I mean, there's also for the more senior athletes, and if I may mention Richard Whitehead in this category, he probably won't thank me for it. For some athletes, this was their last opportunity. And again, everybody wants to go out with a bang, on the world's greatest sporting stage. And I know particularly Richard, looking forward to Tokyo, plowed all his, physical and mental energies into preparing for the games, and to have to then wind down and, stop that momentum, rebuild, and then look towards another 15 months of incredibly hard training was a bit of a challenge, to say the least. Lastly, the athletes, these days, they faced reduced income by way of appearance fees. No athletes were going out doing after dinner speeches or their commercials for various organisations, and so they, like many people, and again, this is something that's not specific to athletes, many people furloughed and made redundant or lost businesses as a result of the pandemic. But I think you can see that potentially this is a huge blow to many of our athletes. Next slide, please. Similarly, it's not just the athletes who have been affected by the pandemic. And I think at this point, everybody's been affected by the pandemic. Within specific reference to the disability sports sector, it's worth thinking that with reference to Paralympics GB, Paralympics GB is a charity. So the organisation that funds, elite parasport and gets the teams prepared to compete to the very best of their ability on the biggest global sporting stage is a charity, and dependent on commercial partners to fund their development programs, their training programs and equipment, etc., etc., etc. And the pandemic has particularly, it's hit the charity sector incredibly hard. So looking forward, we're in uncertain times regarding where that funding will come from. Will we lose it? Will it have an impact on the number of athletes and staff? The staff, I've already touched on the role of the NHS staff in supporting para athletes, but the coaching staff, medical staff, admin staff, and everybody else within the Paralympics GB, the national sporting governing bodies, as English Institute of Sport, every single sport, every single level, this has impacted on them. And the one hope we have at the moment is next year that there will be a resumption, and we're seeing it. It's like slowly but surely of sport, and we'll be able to go forward and Tokyo will be amazing. Next slide, please, Edmund. However, it's not all doom and gloom, and I think athletes responded to these challenges in some fantastically unique and positive ways. Typical of Paralympians, and the image on the right is of para athletes, super couple, Steph Reed and Brett Lakatos, training, I think, in their back garden with Brenton, his Canadian wheelchair athlete, using a resistance band to help Steph do some what looks like sprint starts. And I think this is sort of fairly typical of the images that were shared on social media. And social media has been amazing for the athletes because it's enabled them to stay connected with each other, with their sponsors, with their families, and share this kind of image and stay motivated and stay positive and get creative with training solutions. And there's a certain amount of truth to the adage that you become stronger through adversity. And if there is one group of people who are used to challenges and adversity, it's the para sports population. An impairment or a disability means that for most people, on most days, they face challenges, be it around mobility, accessing training, adapting training. And this is just another challenge. It's an incredibly difficult time for everybody, and I want to keep reiterating devastating impact on communities and individuals all around the world. But we can come through this. We will come through this, and creatively together, we will find solutions. Next slide, please, Edmund. So, looking forwards, as I mentioned, sport has started to pick up a little bit. There are certain countries who've managed their pandemic incredibly well and have now in a position for athletes to start training. They're still training with restrictions, and it's very much down to which sport you're taking part in at the minute, how well you're able to access training facilities. But we are starting to see those little buds of a new sporting future come through. And I think this is a unique opportunity to rebuild sport from the foundations and together for everyone. I think personally, I think this recently with issues around of racism in sport, we know that we need to change sport. And we know that how important now, for everybody on this webinar, I'm sure now appreciates the value of being to go outside and move and be active in terms of the positive benefits that has in your mental health and your physical health. And it's important, I think, that we build sport from the foundations up, and we include everybody, regardless of race, regardless of disability. Elite sport, for me, I don't think we really want to be looking at a model of sport that plows 99% of the money into 1% of sport. And I'm not going to mention any sports by name, but I think the Paralympic movement, para athletes, all of us on this webinar, those in academia and the various universities, I'm delighted to see my friends from SOAS on the guest list. I hope everybody's okay there. But we all have a role to play to develop this model. We all have our experiences, our unique perspectives. We need to mobilize ourselves and be very vocal in rebuilding sport. And together, we will get through it. Sport will return. It's been there for thousands of years. It's not going away just because of a virus. We need to honour the staff who've kept us healthy and allowed us to get to this point. We need to honour the memories, sadly, of those people who have lost their lives as a result of the pandemic. But we need to remain positive, and we need to remain active. And hopefully this time next year, I'll be part of a webinar looking forward to what will be an incredible summer of parasport in Tokyo. Thank you very much for your time. I hope I haven't run over too much. Nagase-san, I'm really looking forward to your presentation. Ice stage hockey looks incredible, and I hope everybody will enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Right, so over to Mitsuru Nagase in Hokkaido.
So again, good afternoon, people in the UK, and good evening, people in Japan. So my name is Mitsuru Nagase, and today I'm very glad that I have a chance to talk to you. I'm speaking from Sapporo, Hokkaido, where host the marathon and long walk, the Tokyo Olympic next year, but not a marathon in the Paralympic. Marathon and the Paralympic will be held in Tokyo. So I would like to talk about my perspective through my experience. Actually, this is my first time to do public speech on webinar, and also my first challenge doing in English also. So I'm a bit nervous, but I just try. Okay, I was born in January 23rd and in 1976. I think it's the same birthday.
It is.
Noelle.
Incredible. What a coincidence.
Just 10-year difference.
Thanks for that as well. Yeah.
I know another para-athlete in the wheelchair rugby. It's the same birthday.
It's a good day to be born.
Yeah. Now I use a wheelchair, but I didn't have any disability when I was a kid. I gotta share my slide. Okay. I like to play sports, and I have played basketball when I was in junior high school and high school. But when I was 15 years old, I felt something strange on my legs. Gradually, I was getting difficult to run and jump, and I had to give up to play basketball. I went to the hospital and had some examinations. In a couple of weeks, doctor told me the name of disease. It's very rare. I don't know if Noelle knows. It's a chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyradicular neuropathy. It's very complicated. It's very rare disease. This is the name of disease. This affects nerves of my body, and I lose muscle power on legs and arms. I got some treatments, and I thought I would be cured and be able to play basketball again, but they didn't go well. After all treatments, doctor told me that he tried to the best, but nothing could cure my disease. I was very sad and disappointed. Why me? Why only me? My friend could run and play without any problem, but only I couldn't. I returned to the school and tried to go back to the team to help them once, but I could not do that because I could not accept myself in this situation. I was in a long and dark tunnel for many years. I was always dreaming to play sports again, but it was just a dream which would not come true. At those time, like 1992 or 93, I think it's near Barcelona, Paralympic was not popular like now. I didn't know that about Paralympic. It was very difficult to get the information about parasport in Japan. Internet was not in common use. I spent about 4 years to know about Paralympic. The first time I watched the parasport on TV, I was very impressed and excited that I would be able to play sports again. After that, I joined the para ice hockey team in Hokkaido, and my challenge to the Paralympic had started. I want to show some pictures. These are equipment for the para ice hockey. We use a sledge, and we sit on the sledge, and we use 2 sticks. In regular hockey, the player uses 1 stick, but on sledge, we use 2 sticks with ice picks so that we can move on the ice. And this is a friend of my teammate. He's a defensive forward. Players play like that. And this is me. I was a goalkeeper. I sit a bit different from others. I bend the knees and I use goal equipment. I studied para ice hockey in 1995, and also I debuted in national team in 1997. I remembered my first game in the international, which was against GB, and we played in Osaka. What do you think of a score? Who win? It was 0-0 and tied. I stopped the whole stop, but we could not score against GB. So after that, I participated in the 4 Paralympic Games: 1998 Nagano, 2002 Salt Lake City, 2006 Torino, and 2010 Vancouver. First 3 Paralympics, Team Japan finished 5th place every time. We wanted to win the medal, but we could not even advance to the semifinal. In Torino Paralympic was our 3rd time. I was very disappointed, and I was thinking to end my career. I trained a lot, but always we lost in Paralympic. Not like Noelle-san. Noelle-san always win the medal. He's a good athlete. We won it, but we couldn't. After 9 or 10 months of the Torino Paralympic, I talked with my teammates and staff, and I found everybody was disappointed in Torino and had tough time like me. When I was in tough time and when I was sad, I was thinking about just myself. I could not look around. After I talked with others, I could change my mind, and I was sure I had good teammates, staff, and many people who were supporting me, family, friends, and colleagues. I realized I was not alone. It was very easy to end my career, but I thought if I had a chance, I should challenge and might do my best. In Vancouver Paralympic, Team Japan advanced to the semi-final first time. The game was against home country Canada. As you know, Canada is a big hockey country and ranked #1 at the time. They won the gold in Torino, and Japan beat Canada only once in 14 years. Most of the people expected Canada would win, like 3-0 or 5-0. But we did not give up. Before the game in the locker room, our head coach gave us a speech that we might have played 1,000 games against Canada, and we have lost 999 times so far. But today we're gonna win this game. One chance. We have a chance in front of us, and let's get it. And we start the game. In the first period, Canada scored the first, and in second period, Japan tied the game. The game was very tough and close. Canada played very physical and tried many shots on Japan goal. We had only few shots on Canada. We are very patient. And last minute of the game, we had a big chance and we could score. Although we lost in the final game against the USA, we won the silver medal. I want to show you the video right now. Could you start the video, Nana-san? I need to stop the share. Oh, this is not. One before. No.
It's been an honor to receive this award as we put our names on the history of the Paralympics. That's been wonderful.
I think this is a different one.
Sled hockey from.
It is my honor to present the award to the Japan Ice Sled Hockey Team.
It's been an honor to receive this award as we put our names on the history of the Paralympics. That's been wonderful. I think we have started sled hockey from since 1998 Nagano Paralympics. It has been very, very hard work, great dedication for all the team members and the players. Finally paid off. I think everybody did a good job. That's all.
Yuhara, the pass for Takahashi. Yuhara shoots and scores. He scores with 1:13, and Japan has taken the lead in an unbelievable turn of events.
I think we were just focused winning, of defeating Canada. That was the major thing. My one piece of advice is, do not give up in your dream. Look at us. Japan took us 12 years to get silver medal. We never gave up. That's why it gave us such a result. So do not give up on your life.
Okay, thank you very much. So Team Japan was awarded in IPC as the best performance season. This is a picture of after the medal ceremony. When I was in high school, I could not imagine that I would be the medalist. If I could not imagine to play sports again. In Paralympic, we always lost and we were disappointed many times. It took 14 years to win the medal. Nowadays, we are in a very difficult situation due to COVID-19. We're walking in a long and dark tunnel. Nobody knows when this situation will end. Many para-athletes have similar experiences because of the accident or disease. They have disappointed and they might be going to give up everything. Para-athlete lost their legs, lost their light, or lost others. If we think what we have lost, we will be negative. But if we think what we still have, we will see our possibilities. So we showed how we achieved in Paralympics. Looking into Paralympic, we can see how much human has possibilities. I learned from Paralympic that it is important to think what I have now, not what I have lost. And I believe if you do not give up right now, we can get up the tunnel. Now we're in a tough situation due to COVID-19 and losing a lot of things. You may be sad and you may be almost going to give up something. But if you're alive, you still the power to make it possible to possible. I know we are able to overcome this difficult situation if we believe in ourselves and help each other and do not give up. Thank you for listening.
But for today, I'm going to wrap it up. So a big thank you to both of you. And I guess the messages were, Noel, stay positive, and Nagase-san, never give up. So that's what we have to remember.
Great place to end.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.